In the 1970s, the economists Joan and Richard Sweeney belonged to the Capitol Hill Babysitting Co-op in Washington, D.C. The co-op had about 150 families in it, each with kids. Members of the co-op who needed a babysitter could turn to the other members to watch their kids. By joining the co-op, you could get free babysitting when you needed it, in exchange for doing a little babysitting yourself. Since everyone had kids, watching a few more for a night wasn't too hard, and so it worked out to be a good deal for everyone involved. To make sure that everyone was pulling their weight and not mooching off the system, the co-op printed off coupons, which you got when you joined. Each coupon was good for 1/2 hour of babysitting. So, if you needed a babysitter for 3 hours, you would have to pay another family in the co-op 6 of the coupons. And you could earn the coupons by babysitting for others. It was a simple monetary system which facilitated the babysitting exchange so that it was fair. There were some administrative duties, however, and some co-op members had to do some extra work like making the coupons, helping new members, and maintaining a list of members and distributing it so people knew who to call, and so on. Wanting to keep everything free from real money, those who did this extra work were paid in coupons. But to ensure the system was fair, the coupons the administrators got came from annual fees every family had to pay in the form of coupons. It was like a little government that levied a small tax in order to pay for the administration of the whole system. Very clever, and it worked great, except for one small snafu. For a couple of years, each member paid about 28 coupons per year in these fees, for a total of 4,200 coupons. But the people working in administrative positions were only paid about 3,800 coupons. The other 400 coupons were stuffed away in a box and essentially taken out of circulation. The money supply was shrinking. Couples employed a sensible strategy. They would babysit a bunch and build up a stockpile of coupons they could use when they were busy. But as coupons disappeared, building up those reserves became harder. There was suddenly less coupons coming in than they needed to maintain their stockpile. Worried that they wouldn't have enough coupons for a potential emergency, everyone was staying home. I mean, think about it. If the co-op lost 400 coupons every year, it was just impossible for everyone to maintain their stockpiles. They had to be diminished, and that psychologically worried people enough that they stopped asking other members to babysit for them. The co-op had fallen into a recession where no one could get work. Their economy had screeched to a halt. The co-op, being in Washington, D.C., was mostly lawyers who wanted to start imposing rules about using a minimum number of coupons each month. Regulation was their answer. But Joan and Richard Sweeney knew better. As economists, they understood the problem here was a shrinking money supply and fixed prices. Since each coupon was worth a fixed 1/2 hour of babysitting, people were resistant to changing their value and, say, offering just one coupon for a full hour. The answer the co-op was looking for was that they just needed to print off a bunch of these fake coupons and give them to everyone. Eventually, after their requirements on members didn't work, the lawyers listened to the economists and printed more coupons, and soon the co-op was back to normal. This little parable illuminates the finding of Milton Friedman and Anna Schwartz. People have what we call liquidity preferences, or a demand for money. Actually, it was John Maynard Keynes who identified the importance of this liquidity preference. When we have plenty of money, we feel confident in spending it. We're more willing to remodel our home or go on vacation or just do simple things like go out to eat a little more. But if the money supply shrinks and the circular flow of income doesn't have enough cash to ensure everyone is able to meet their liquidity preference, then people start to pull back on their spending. They cancel their vacations, put off the remodel, and stay in more, just like the babysitting co-op. In the orthodox Keynesian school, recessions were caused by a change in people's sentiments. When people get spooked by economic uncertainty, they're driven by animal spirits to pull back on spending, and the paradox of thrift makes their fear a self-fulfilling prophecy. But in this new monetarist perspective, people's sentiments aren't so fragile. They aren't being spooked by the news. They're seeing their actual account balances shrink because there isn't enough money circulating in the economy. It's contractions in the money supply, not animal spirits, that cause these recessions. Keynes emphasized fiscal policies like government spending and taxes as a way to manage the business cycle and keep the economy at full employment. But the monetarist view emphasized monetary policies instead. When the economy is booming, the central bank should pull back on the money supply and raise interest rates to keep inflation at bay. But if the economy falls into a recession, then it's time to increase the money supply and reduce interest rates. That should boost aggregate demand and bring the economy back to full employment. To better understand the difference here, let's compare the two programs. Fiscal policy is something the government, Congress, and the president are in control of. During a recession, they cut taxes and increase government spending. When resources are idle, as they are in a recession, that additional spending gets magnified by the expenditure multiplier, which boosts aggregate demand and brings the economy back to full employment. Monetary policy is something the central bank, in the US it's the Federal Reserve, is in control of. During a recession, they use open market operations to purchase government securities like bonds from banks, giving them excess reserves and increasing the supply of loanable funds. That lowers interest rates, which boosts investment spending and consumption spending too, which pushes up aggregate demand and restores the economy to full employment. Both Keynesians and monetarists are on the same page when it comes to these policies and their effects. But since Keynesians see investment spending as too unpredictable to rely on, and recessions as the result of the paradox of thrift, fiscal policy is their preferred tool and the one they believe will be the most effective. Monetarists, on the other hand, see fluctuations in the money supply as the root cause of recessions, and that good monetary policy is not only the best way out of a recession, but also the best way to avoid them. Milton Friedman himself took a stronger stance on monetary policy. His research had shown that the gold standard was too strict and made the money supply too volatile. But he also found that the Federal Reserve can be so badly mismanaged that it can plunge the economy into a Great Depression. He proposed the K% rule, which says the supply of money should grow at a fixed rate each year, irrespective of the business cycle. Friedman was quite literally suggesting that we let a computer run monetary policy for us. A computer wouldn't be prone to human biases and prejudice. It could just increase the money supply by a fixed rate every year and keep the money supply growing steadily. Friedman's support for this proposition was the result of further research he did, which connected our short-run aggregate supply to the long run, which we'll talk about next. But when you consider the recent rise in cryptocurrencies, many of which have hard-coded something like the K% rule into them, you start to see why Friedman was a man ahead of his time.